Hello and welcome to episode 15 of Seddon and Laceys Comic Stash, part of the Renaissance Men, Cult of Egg, Conglomerate of Joy, Massive Incorporated.
Oh, he's going to go massive. I thought he was going all 90s rave then.
Seddon, how are we in the year of our Lord 2022?
Oh, good work on getting the year right. I was so proud of myself today. I had to write it down on an email, a work-based email for the first time, and I got it right. And I was so busy patting myself on the back. And eventually I had to remember that this isn't really much of an achievement. It's just remembering what year it is. But no, pretty good, mate. As we know, we released our Christmas episode and our New Year one with Hawkeye, and now we're back in the rotation. And it feels like forever ago that we last recorded. So I'm really pleased to be getting back into the swing of it.
Yeah, a little heat sneak behind the curtain there. We did the specials well before Christmas.
Sorry, yeah. I mean, it feels like a couple of days since we did the New Year's one, and a week before that for Christmas. Shit. I like the fact though that even though we did do it in advance, I still come on with my ridiculous cardigan and my ridiculous elf jumper. I was prepared at any time of the year to do Christmassy stuff, but no, it does feel nice to be kind of back doing this again. And I know we're gonna go into our top 5 superheroes today, but as it's post Christmas and we can talk about it now. Did you get any nice prezzies, any nice comic stash prezzies from Santa?
I did. Santa brought me an array of wonders. I got From Your Good Self, Vision, which is definitely in my reading list near the top end.
I think we'll do as long as you don't read it and go fuck me, this was trash. And
even if I do, even
yeah.
if I do, we're still doing a special on it.
Yeah. And I look forward. I think I said to you before, and I think I said on these things before. I look forward to you reading it with a slight bit of trepidation because it's always, I guess, when you're personally well, I was gonna say when you're personally invested, that makes it sound like I created it. But when you love something, you kind of you hope that at the very least other people are going to get something out of it. So
yeah,
fingers crossed for that one.
what else did I get? I got from my dad Batman 66 Volume 1, the Joker Saga, and the Batman Who Laughed. So,
I know I've mentioned to you this off air, but I also have the Joker saga. So again, I think that will make a nice little upcoming episode for us to go through.
yeah. And then I got some vouchers from work. Basically, they give us these what they call wow vouchers for when we do our shit properly.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
went into the sales and picked up a few extra bits. Got Deadpool kills the Marvel Universe again, so we got part 2 for that. Picked up The Crow because they had it for less than 15 quid.
I was going to say, I think we talked about that on a previous episode, didn't we? About how it's really hard to find in print very often, and even when it is in print, it tends to be sold out very quickly, and then the price to rise quite quickly on the collected editions.
So yeah, I got that on the cheap, and I was like, I'm fucking getting that.
Yeah.
What else did I get? I've got Civil War on its way. It hasn't been delivered yet. I got Daredevil and the Platinum Collection, and my other half got a Silver Surfer Platinum Collection for herself, which I will also read at some point.
I'm a secret, quite a big fan of the Silver Surfer, so that'll be quite handy. I know you mentioned Civil War there, and again, I think it's something that we've kind of earmarked for a future show. Maybe do something like we did with the Hawkeye one, where we go through the comic book and then there's a Civil War movie. So do some sort of comparative point and talk about how it differs and things like that. But
and also look at which team you're on.
yeah, I know which team I think you'll be on, but it's always very interesting to find out which team people actually. You can tell a lot about which team people side with in that.
So, what did Santa bring you?
Comic book wise, not a ton. As I say, Joker Saga I got myself. I just fancied it, and I also picked up, which had been on my list to pick up for quite a while, Strange Adventures, which is from the same guys who wrote Vision. So And other than that, I think the only actual present I got, and God bless him, my brother bought me the hardcover deluxe Planetary, which is, I wish I'd bought it upstairs to show it off, because it is a beast. It's the whole series in one volume. But I think if I'd have tried to lift it up the stairs, I wouldn't have made the show tonight, because it would have taken 8 hours to lift it up. But a series I've read before. I read it both in single issues when I used to buy single issues, and trades, and now I've got this lovely sort of shelf version. But at some point I will excavate it up the stairs, and it will start appearing behind me somewhere. So but yeah, that was the only actual comic book Prezi that I got.
That was the one that I looked at and went, "Ooh, that's nearly as big as Nightfall."
Yeah. It is. It's kind of in that world of chunkiness. Strange enough, I did get a puzzle, a jigsaw puzzle for Christmas, which is comic book related, because it's loads of covers from Batman, which was really nice, because it was me other half's mum who got it for us. And you just kind of, when you've got zero expectation to them having any idea of anything you might like ever.
Yeah.
Like the fact that she kind of had a concept that I like Batman was amazing for me. So yeah, that was kind of tangentially comic book. But no, that was it for the Prezi front. But to be honest, I don't know how you find it. I mean, a lot of the presents that people buy for me are from like Amazon wish lists, and I must admit I've really scrolled down the amount of stuff that I put on Amazon wish lists, because I know that I'm a bit of a bugger for just going out and buying stuff. And I don't want people to have bought it off a wish list and then me not even think of that and be in Waterstones and just pick it up myself and things like that.
Yeah, it's like I have the wish list that's there for most stuff, and it's normally stuff that is like I'm waiting on that price to drop a bit before I pick it up. But it actually did come in useful, because a load of the stuff that my dad got me was all up there, because it was stuff that was sat in my wish list. Nowhere. He was like, I don't know what to get you. I was like, there's my Amazon wish list. Go nuts.
Well, I think that Planetary one that my brother got me, I think that had been on my wish list for about 4 years. And then he just went, well, I bloody bought it for you. It's not his real voice, but I bloody bought it for you because it's been on your list for so long. I said, yes, because no one sodding bought it for me. Like, I didn't want it to be on there for 4 years. I just assumed someone would buy it. But yeah, bless him for picking it up for us.
So the new section for the show, yes. Reading Corner.
Reading Corner. I like the idea of it. I like the name of it. Not that it's original, but I just kind of like the idea of Reading Corner. So what have you been doing in your Reading Corner, you dirty little boy?
So I have been starting 1602. It's a 8-part standalone by the wonderful Neil Gaiman, who I love his stuff in many other forms, things like Coraline's one of his. He's part of writer on
Good Omens.
Good Omens. Yeah. I had to look at the pops to remember.
That's why I have so many pops. You've seen how bad my memory is. Pops are my memory now.
So yeah, I've done the first 3, and it is very, very clever. Set in 1602. So Elizabethan England, and all the Marvel universe are there. Nick Fury's there, Doctor Strange is there, the X-Men are there, Doctor Doom, Daredevil, and the way that they are in that world and don't look out of place in that world, yet the characters make so much sense and still hark back to the form that we best know them in.
Yeah.
I'm absolutely loving it and need to pull my finger out and get through the other issues.
I picked it up pre-Christmas because I knew you'd picked it up, and I'd never read it. I like you. I'm quite a Neil Gaiman fan as well, although generally have lent more into his books than I did have his comic books, to be honest. But you sort of said about it, and it kind of added that little layer of intrigue to go, okay, yeah, let's give it a crack. I must admit, I did. I got the iPad because I got it digitally. I got the iPad ready to start reading it the other night, and then I played Football Manager 22 for about 8 hours instead. But yeah,
it's not a massive one.
No, I mean,
so
like, it sounds like it's something that, oh no, I see you burn through. That's almost a bad term, isn't it? But something where you go, I know we've said about this before. You get the beginning, the middle, and the end of the story. So actually, once you get going, if it's vibing with you, you'll tend to sort of keep trucking through to the end. So yeah, I think once I actually put down Football Manager for 5 minutes, I will probably have a read through that myself.
So, what's in your reading corner?
I mentioned it earlier. I've been reading through Strange Adventures, and I've really enjoyed it so far. Very partial to the writer Tom King, but this is about Adam Strange from DC, and not a character that I particularly have any history with or any great knowledge of, other than knowing that the basic premise is he gets transported to alien world where he's a hero and he's got I think a jetpack that flies and a pew pew gun, and he takes on the evil people who are trying to invade that planet, and then he will get transported back to Earth. And as I say, I've seen him more in crossovers than anything else, and picked up the odd bit here and there. But I'm about halfway through. This one's a 12-issue run, and I say about halfway through. I'm actually 5 full issues through, and the premise so far is very much that he's written a book, or him and his wife have written a book about what happens on that world when he goes there. And let's say his fame and heroism is going through the roof on Earth, and he's doing all the chat show circuit, and he's reaching kind of new levels of popularity, and then out of the blue, as it seems at the moment, people start to suggest, and there's a bit of a social media campaign, that maybe all the things he did on that planet weren't so heroic, and maybe he was actually attacking the wrong people. And to kind of clear his name, he turns to Batman and says, you're the greatest detective, can you prove to the world that I'm fine? And Batman says, no, I'm too close to this, but gets in another character, Mr. Terrific, to have a look at it. And that's kind of where I am. Mr. Terrific has started to have a look into it, and let's just say it's suggesting that maybe there's more to this story than just the heroic story that is portrayed. But kind of, we talked about it on other things. So far, it's scratching that itch of telling me a superhero story, or a story set in a superhero world, but with a different sort of message to get across. So yeah, so far so good. And other than that, I've been chugging away slowly but surely on I don't want to say the latest run, that's a lie, the last run of the Hulk, the Immortal Hulk. And I say the not the latest one because it's actually now got another series come out of it. But I will do that in a lot more in depth when I get a bit more through that, because that is 50 plus issues, and I think I'm only about 6-7 through it. But what I've read so far, absolutely loving.
Nice. Hulk's a weird one for me because I enjoy him in the films and stuff, and like there's been some decent Hulk video games and stuff. But one of those I've never thought about reading. Hulk.
I've dipped in and out. There was a long run when I was probably in my prime reading by Peter David, and some of it's wonderful, fantastic. And because of that, I think I read other runs by other creators that come along, and generally I found that for me it didn't reach that heights again very often. Although Planet Hulk and World War Hulk, very enjoyable. But this run, this Immortal Hulk, they do something very different. Rather than focus on the superhero side, it certainly so far it's a lot more like a horror comic, and it's a lot more to do with this kind of psychological side of it and the psychological horror. So I'm really vibing with it from that, and I know it's very well acclaimed. So it's kind of wanted me to read more, but I will report back more the further I get into it, and if it turns into an absolute belter, then we'll source a copy of it for your good self as well.
So we are into the topic for this episode, which is our top 5 superheroes. Emphasis on the word superhero. As we like rules, there are rules.
God, I hope I haven't broken any of them.
We cannot have any anti-heroes. So no Deadpool, no Punisher, no one that's on that side of the fence.
Yep.
They have to be a superhero, so some form of super to them. So Batman is allowed because he is
Yeah.
a super detective.
Yeah,
But
I guess the more traditional, like, would have been in one of the hero teams, would have had a solo comic that was focused on good guys doing good things rather than
yes,
as we say, Deadpool, which is focused on whatever they fancy at the time. Could be killing people, could be doing good things, could be just having a lark, or Punisher murdering everyone that he sees. I'm very, very confident that I have not strayed outside of any boundaries for this.
so I know I have a definitive list of 5. You, Mr. Seddon, tried to come in
I
with a list of 10.
I said to you before we started recording, and I will sort of say it now. I love doing top five. So it's always something I've quite liked. I have one of those kind of list brains, but I think what I love about it is that I find them really hard to do. This was really hard for me. I think one of the things that made this so difficult is, and we'll actually see this. I'll touch on this when I do my top five. Is there's so many comics out there, and that's not even saying that there's so much to choose from. It makes it hard. I think the thing that made it hard for me is there's been some really, really bad stuff for some of these characters, and that's some really bad stories, but there's been some amazing stuff, and I kind of had to keep coming back to going, who are my favorites? Who do I kind of love the most for whatever reason? And we'll get into those reasons. And to a degree, is the bad stuff that I've read of theirs so bad that there's no recovering from it? And that made it really difficult. And I said to you, like, I got it down to a 10. And whilst trying to get it down to a 5, it went up to a 14. And you know, there was lots of fluctuations. But yeah, that was the most difficult part for me, was going, oh, but there was a bollocks run at this point, and that's made the character kind of bad. Or but yeah, I'll get into that a little bit more, because actually, weird enough, for most of the characters that made my top 5, that there are points where I just go, and I don't like them at this stage or something like that. But yeah, they are the ones that I just love, is the honest truth.
So with mine, I've gone for my favorite morally good characters. So, them being very much heroes for one reason or another. But we'll take your honourable mentions first.
I
Then have your number 5.
do you know what do you want my honourable mentions? Do you want
Yes,
my okay?
because if not, you're only going to, start changing them in and out halfway through.
I guess that's true. I will be committed. So the ones that were very, very close, it didn't make it, were, and it was mentioned earlier, was Silver Surfer. The Hulk nearly made it, but didn't. Daredevil was very, very close to making it. Nightcrawler was in the top 5 for a long time and didn't make it. And Batman is in my honourable mentions, which is the one which I think I mentioned to you before we started. It might surprise you, but yeah, he was an honourable mention for me. But so those were the ones that kind of rounded out the top. They were fighting for those top 5 positions, but I think in a lot of cases there was just like, certainly for a character like Nightcrawler, there was one that I felt ticked all those boxes, and but more so, and at one point it was a fight between Batman and Daredevil in my mind, which Batman would have won, but I don't know, like, they're all great, but yeah, those ones didn't make the list.
So
I know you didn't. I know you said you got your 5 and stuck with it, but is there anyone who, like, off the top of your head, that didn't make your 5, that you would certainly give a shout out as ones you have a whole lot of love for, and would have made it in and around that?
see, a couple of them were nearly, but I was like, no, because they would be more better for another list. We'll do another day.
Blown that other list now, wouldn't I, boy?
So Nightwing was there for original Robin version Nightwing.
By the way, when speaking about Christmas, I've got my Nightwing hoodie on that I got over Christmas time. Loving it. I'd like to say I've changed since this turned up in my house, but no, pretty much constantly wearing it. So
Doctor Strange was in there, but then I had my moral thing of but there is alternate evil Doctor Strange who is still an egomaniac that is in Doctor Strange, where he still is questionable. So he
He's
dropped out for
he's a
that reason.
he's a character that I'll be honest, over the years, like his, I said about people kind of with the Adam Strange thing, seeing him in teams and crossovers. I'd say I'm more experienced with him being part of stories rather than his own specific solo series. But I have read a few bits here and there that I've liked. But yeah, fantastic costume though.
And obviously the Guardians were there or thereabouts, but then again, I was also like, but they're questionable morally.
Yeah.
A lot of what they do is for their own gain, but if it saves the world,
Star Lord certainly, like he was the one who crept into the 14 for me. Like he's someone who I guess you're right that some of the stuff they do is morally ambiguous, but I think us as the audience kind of know, yeah, they're good guys, really, though, aren't they? They just they're more kind of Han Solos than anything else, aren't they?
yeah.
They're a group of Han Solos.
So yeah, they were there or thereabouts, but then they fell at that. They have their ambiguous moments, or that
Yeah.
in Nightwing's case will be in another list when we do. That's on the list for co-characters, sidekicks.
Yeah.
So who is your
Oh,
number?
I was going to say, like, the other thing that I found quite hard with the Guardians, and this didn't necessarily ring me through, as you'll see with some of my picks coming up, but I found it quite hard to pick a favourite out of the group. Star Lord probably kind of would have jumped out in front, but it almost felt like an insult to them to pick them out, because I think they're all done so well. Number 5, which is the most modern character that I've got on here, and it was the first name I wrote down, but I knew it wasn't my number one. But it was the first name I wrote down, and Miss Marvel, the Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel. I absolutely adore this character. I think it will get more attention when the TV show comes. I know she's been featured in the game, but as I say, it was one of those comic book series. And I think we mentioned it before. One of the comic book series that I picked up, going, this probably isn't for me. This probably is for a younger audience and probably a female audience. But they did such a remarkable job of bringing me into a world that I haven't and will never experience, because I will never be a Muslim teenage girl in New Jersey. And I say never, who knows, actually, but I don't think I ever will. But this is one of those wonderful things, and she just meant so much to me so early. I think they just established a great character and a great hero. You want her to win at all costs, and not because necessarily she's got the best power set. In fact, if anything, I think that's one of her selling points, is when she does her embiggen stuff and she kind of just makes her hand really big. The visuals are quite odd, but you just go, yeah, like that's what you'd be like if you were a younger version of me, not knowing how to use his powers. You want to do good, but you can't necessarily. And of course, over the course of not even that long that we've had her, I think she is now the perfect every person hero out there. And
Yeah,
I don't know whether it will appear on your list, but I know I've said it on the show before. For me, this is Spider-Man for this generation, but actually, I think I appreciate this Miss Marvel so much and so much more, because I think it's a much tougher sell. Like you're getting affinity with people of all sexes, ages, and things like that out of a character that maybe you shouldn't be able to. But yeah, a true hero, and yeah, just so much love for the character.
yeah. As I said when you mentioned her before, I've not read any more than, I think it was a freebie issue that was chucked out a couple of years ago on a comic book day thing. So it's one of the few things that I've read digitally, and she is one of those characters that comes across like Spidey does, like the every person sort of thing, who is just trying to be as good as they can,
Yeah,
do what they need to do their like school and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, it's
she
a
feels
perfect pick for it because
she feels real, and
yeah,
but with that ultimate heroism, but without what can sometimes be quite dangerous. I think when you're creating the really good characters is that she doesn't come across as twee or condescending or annoying. You know, like she
no,
comes across like a I think you said it just saying a human trying to do their best. And you know, like yeah, just absolutely amazing. But yeah, that's my number 5. And as I say, my newest character by quite some way, I think. But yeah, like um, I think she'll be huge. I mean, God knows what they'll do with this TV show, but I think you know she could get massive in the world. I think really she probably is still more focused in the comic book world and probably hasn't permeated quite as far and wide. But if they don't mess up this TV show, I think you could be looking at like an upper echelon known Marvel character in 4 or 5 years' time.
yeah.
For you, my boy, what is your number 5?
So my number 5 is Daredevil. So he gets in for 2 levels. One, when he is in his day job as Matt Murdock, doing his pro bono legal work for those in need, the poorest, the neediest. He is the ultimate good guy for what he does there. And then at night, again, goes out, takes down all the bad guys, quite happy to go for it. But another one that doesn't kill.
Yeah, yeah, that strong moral compass thing again, isn't it? Of going
They will
as
get
much
their
as I,
justice. They have to
yeah,
go. They have to go to court. He won't kill them, however much they fucked him over or people over, and always done for the greater good. You know, there was one run that I was in. It's in the ultimate thing that I got because I ran it on Christmas Day when I picked it up from my mate's house, where Kingpin is trying to squeeze a load of people in housing blocks because he wants to buy the land to build a casino. And there are Kingpin's henchmen going around setting fires during the night. So he's not only is Matt Murdock there being their lawyer to make sure they can't take their houses away, but he's then there at night as Daredevil,
yeah,
fucking up the people that are trying to burn the houses down so they can buy them off cheaper. Yeah, awesome moral guy and kick-ass suit.
I mean, there's been I think we will do some Daredevil stuff going forward. I think a lot of the stuff is you know we gravitate to Batman because there's so much Batman, and I think Daredevil has got a kind of pantheon of stories as good as that. But a lot of his were in kind of the monthlies, so it hasn't got like the specials and the Killing Joke esques of the world. But I think
Yeah,
there's some amazing stuff in there. One of the things, and as I said, he was on my honourable mentions, and I wholeheartedly agree with you. Sort of a very grounded, realistic portrayal of again a human, because that's what he is, and he shares those traits with Batman, as in he's doing this, and do you see the beatings? You know, it's not like he's full of powers, and it's not like he can just kip up the next day and go, all right, you know, get on with my life. You actually see that drag on him, and for the most part, and not always, but for the most part, I think grounding a lot of those stories. That example you used there of Kingpin using thugs to take down like local housing and things like that. I think keeping him in that street level has always been hugely beneficial because I think he feels like he's the hero to the poor, the impoverished, the forgotten people, and
yeah,
you know, just wonderful from that regards. And then, as you say, like you know, to kind of team that up with his day job, where he continues to show the heroism, and I think in some writers' hands, in some very smart writers' hands, they've actually been able to depict that he can make more of a difference in his day job as he can in his night job sometimes, and yeah, just multifaceted. Yeah, now that we're talking about him, why didn't I put him in my top 5?
So, who is your number 4?
So number 4, I mentioned in my almosts Nightcrawler as a character, and Nightcrawler was kind of introduced in the Chris Claremont Giant Size and Beyond X-Men run, and he got bumped for Colossus from the same run. So Colossus, for anyone who hasn't seen him, I mean, he is in the X-Men movies, but I think plays a much smaller part in that. But Colossus is let's say a farmer's boy from Russia, and one of the things they wanted to do was try and make it a bit more multicultural when they did it. But they kind of set him up as he's a big lad. When I say a farmer's boy, he's a big lad, but as a simple kind of farmer's boy with not many goals, not many kind of not assigned to him at all. But his mutant power is that he can turn his body into metal, and beyond that, he's super strong when he does that as well. And so I think generally he's always had a great visual for him, but where I think he jumped very high, and as I say, some of this stuff you can apply to the Nightcrawler character as well. I found both of them almost the heart and soul of that X-Men run that I adored so much, like where you had the, let's say, the cooler characters in Wolverine going off and doing the slice and dice thing, and you had Cyclops be the leader. These guys, back to moral compass again, they would not do wrong. They would not kill, even though they had these immense powers and they could do. And I mean, we even have a specific story where he's kind of forced to make that decision. Like things have gone very bad, and the only one who can stop it and stop massive damage is him. And I think they always played amazingly well with the idea of going, if we push him to his limits, what will he do? And for the most part, he tended to take the good side. And in later years, he had a wonderful and I know we're talking about heroism, but I think we're talking about these as heroes and kind of what resonated with us. I mean, he has a wonderful storyline with Kitty Pryde where they get together, and it is actually quite a touching romantic story. Something that I find that comics don't always get so spot on with is building those sort of genuine relationships with people. And going back to one of my first experiences, and we talked about it in our opening episode, Secret Wars, and before I knew the X-Men universe, I knew that he cheated on Kitty Pryde while he was over there, and it was gut punching without knowing the history, but it really was. But he felt real in what he did, and through the stories, we've played a lot with his family and his sister, and I think generally he's been a very, very well for someone who's portrayed as more simple in his moral code. I think that it's allowed him to do some really good things with him and really show him off in a good light. I will say later on that there's some stuff that isn't so great, but yeah, sort of 50 years of publishing, there's going to be some rough bits here and there. But yeah, the Russian brawler with a heart, and he will always have my heart.
See, most of my knowledge of X-Men is from the 90s cartoon. I will say the only time I've read X-Men stuff is when they've turned up in other people's things.
Yeah.
Which is why at some point when we do it and we get you to do your where to start with X-Men, there'll be me scrolling down most of it going, right, yes. It's always one of those where because I loved the cartoon as a kid. Absolutely loved it. But it was that point when I wasn't reading stuff. So I never then went, let's go and start buying stuff. And also at that point, again, X-Men was huge. And I think at that point in like the late 90s when the cartoon was out, there was about 4 or 5 different X-Men runs at the same time.
And like we said about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, very, very similar with the X-Men animated, is that takes like hundreds of issues and picks out bits and kind of jigsaw puzzles it together to do a sort of tight animated series. So, there's lots of stories in between, and some of it would be out of place from where it is, and some of the characters are different. Like some of the stories they're telling would be from, let's say, when Colossus is first in it in Giant Size X-Men, but you'll have kind of Jubilee who actually wasn't even invented till 30 years later. So it does sort of splicey. But yeah, like it's it's well worth it, and I guess we'll pick up on that. But yeah, hopefully. One of the things I will say is I did do a recent reread of the early stuff of the Uncanny X-Men run of Chris Claremont's, and some of the stuff. So he's Russian in it, and Nightcrawler is German. Some of the ways they get across that they're Russian and German is quite basic now. You know, they basically say the same two Russian or German lines over and over again to really kind of hammer home that they are, and maybe it lacks some of the smarter storytelling that you might get now to get across. But no, you know, it's. I mean, there's not to spoil too much, but there's one story, and there's a particular period of time where he can no longer change, so he gets stuck in his metal form, and you know, it allows. Well, I say it allows. They obviously put it in their head, and you know, very creative time to kind of go shit, like what would you do and stuff like that. But yes, it's some great stuff out there, and a true hero of Mother Russia. Your number 4, please.
Silver Surfer. So, I know that if you really want to go to the origins, he is slightly corrupt on the fact of he comes down to look at Earth to want to destroy it, but I'll scout it out for Galactus to then destroy it. But in that same run is where he decides, after being around humans, that the planet is worth saving, and then goes off to be this intergalactic savior with a heart. And one characters that, when put into the film, which was obviously that awful Fantastic Four film,
it's so bad I'd actually forgotten about it too. You just reminded me. Thanks.
They do him so badly in that. If that's your only experience of Silver Surfer, then look at the book, look at anything. Even there's even like the Silver Surfer cartoon. Just watch that. That'll cleanse you of the abomination that is that Fantastic Four film. But again, another one where comes from space, has no reason to not do as he's told for his master, but finds humanity in people and animals and everything that is in the world, and then takes that on himself for something that he has no real connection to be the protector.
It felt like it feels like a kind of a very beautiful way to remind us about what's important, doesn't it? You know, you almost go, let's do this in a stranger from a strange place's eyes, and introduce him to all the wonderful things that are out there, and then follow their journey as they realise that. And you know, look, it's framed in humanity being great and this world being great, which I guess is debatable when you look at later years. But yeah, I think it's just that kind of life is great, and I always, and I don't know whether this is looking at it with my life experience lenses on it, but I tend to look back at that the initial kind of coming to scout out Earth is something akin to someone giving it no thought, kicking over an ant's nest because they need to put something up there, like they're putting a shed up or a fence or something like that. And, and kind of that's what we were. But you know, like using that story and subsequent stories to kind of go, he was a humanoid before this, and he did become the Silver Surfer to make a sacrifice because of love and true heroism, and he needed kind of to come to Earth and get that reminder, and as you say, then goes on to do some very heroic things all around the universe. Yeah, and I don't know whether we touched on it so much in the last one, but I quite like the look of him. You know, like
he is very, very cool.
Yeah, you know, and similar with Colossus, I think that metallic look on a character, because you don't see it so much. I think it actually really stands out in the comic. I mean, certainly I remember seeing, and it's the solo series that comes many years later, but stuff that actually leads up to Infinity Gauntlet and stuff like that. I was straight in because I just saw the covers with him on, and I'm just like, wow, what a visually striking character. Maybe want to sort of jump in and read more. And he's got a surfboard, so you know.
Yeah, and I have both variants of the pop.
Yes, yeah, I think he's obscured, but I think he's up and back there somewhere. So, but yeah, no, I'm with you all the way. So that's yours so far. They've been on my honourable mentions, haven't they?
Yep.
God, fucking hell, we need to get a room, man. I guess we've got a virtual room, so.
So, who makes you number 3?
So I'm back in the world of X-Men, you could argue, but I would also argue that I'm in the world of Avengers as well, because my major experience initially and my major love for this character grew from them being an Avenger rather than an X-Men. Now, before I go into who it is, this is the character the most that makes my top 5 that I would say I truly dislike from a heroic standpoint some of the stuff that's been done with this character probably in the last 10 years.
Okay.
But I love everything that happened before this. And it's not that I don't like what happened now, but I'd say the heroism, to a certain degree, could be argued, has gone out the window at this point. But it is Beast. And I would say that we've got a very different Beast now. Post Grant Morrison's new X-Men, I think Beast goes through some dramatic changes in character, and I think he's portrayed very much more. I'm going to say cold and beast-like, but I think a certain sort of definition of Beast. But the Beast I grew in love with was fairy blue Hank McCoy Beast, hanging around in the Avengers, best friends with Wonder Man. Oh yes, there's a Wonder Man with a terrible costume that Wonder Man had, and they were just kind of like best chums, chubbing about. He's kind of I would say that in that Avengers run, there was many people who probably had the same power set as him and or better. You know, like Captain America was probably more athletic, Wonder Man was stronger, but he kind of had this nice, interesting set of powers to him. Being blue and fairy was quite interesting. I didn't know how he got blue and fairy at that time, so it's like, oh, who's this blue fairy dude? But I'm going back to something I said on Kamala Khan. Like at that point, just had such a huge heart. You know, he would do his heroic things, but you could tell that what was really important was not only sort of saving the world, but making sure his mates were all right. And there was a real kind of nice side to him that when I then went back and revisited other stuff of his, which was reading the original X-Men run, because I found out he was one of the original X-Men, and he wasn't blue and furry at the time. I loved him for the same reasons in that, but again, maybe that stuff that drives me towards my favorite heroes is that kind of little extra kink to it, that little extra kind of nugget. And you know, you look at the original X-Men run where he was. I mean, they did often point at his feet and say that he had weird feet and stuff like that because he did have kind of quite elongated toes and stuff. But I think that move into turning blue and furry, I think it allowed them to explore how he still wanted to be a hero, even though people would often point at him and go, well, "You're weird looking," and that sort of thing. And I think going through this list, I found that I had. Well, we talked about it in What Makes a Hero. I want some degree of flaw in there, but I don't necessarily. It doesn't always necessarily have to be a personality flaw. Like the flaw can be the world. The world has an issue with them because of the way they look, and it's him continuously ignoring or trying to combat that by doing heroic things. It almost doesn't matter if people have been throwing rotten tomatoes at him because he looks like a beast. He will still save them, and I absolutely love him for that. And he was smart. He's super smart now. In fact, I would say that possibly kind of the darker turns that maybe they've taken with his character have coincided with maybe making him so super smart that he's emotionally detached now. Whereas back then he was just a smart guy. You know, he was kind of under the Tony Stark levels, but if you needed someone to knock up a science solution, he'd come in and do that. And I quite liked him from that side as well.
This again, another one. My only real being from the TV shows and stuff. But he was always like an educated science teacher. You know, he was well read.
Yeah, and that was kind of, I would say, introduced over time. I think initially, like, he was the smartest of the original 5 X-Men. When they brought him into the Avengers, there was a bit of kind of, he was a bit of a brains in the outfit, but as I say, probably always a little bit behind Tony Stark. But as the years have gone on, yes, he's become a bit more of a Professor Beast and super smart. But yeah, you know, like, who doesn't want a smart hero as well? You know,
Yeah.
like, you know, we kind of want to tell people that using your brain's a good thing sometimes.
Yes.
I forgot what number. Are we on 3?
We are on 3, yes. So
What's your numero trois?
it is Spider-Man.
I wanted to, Chris. I did want to, but I couldn't.
See, reason I have Spider-Man in here, it is on the basis of he is a kid. If you're going for like the normal run or even up to like the new stuff in Miles and things, he's a kid who doesn't really want the powers that he has.
Yeah.
Because he just wants to be a normal teenager and do school and get into uni and, you know, live a normal teenage life. But he understands that he has these powers, so he has to do good with them. Um, Sometimes there are some sort of questionable bits in there. Most of the time, he doesn't kill people unless you watch the films, and then
I mean,
does.
generally in the comic book world, like, any death has been accidental,
Yeah,
but he'll be racked with the guilt as if he'd murdered them. And I
yeah,
think, again, you know, like, that's your dividing line there, isn't it? I mean, never
yeah.
kind of relishes it or never goes like, oh, fuck you, I'm going to get you. Like,
There's a couple where there's one of the runs that I read. He sends Doc Ock into a black hole that Doc Ock's created, and then for the next few issues, he's there trying to work out a way to make an anti-black hole to get Doc Ock back.
we've all done that, haven't we? It's Wednesday night. I'm trying to make an anti-black hole to get out of the black hole that I'm in.
But yeah, it's that sort of thing of like, even though, you know, Doc Ock was trying to take over the world and suck the world into a black hole, Spider-Man knocked him into it by accident and then feels bad about it.
I mean, I said it earlier on the Kamala Khan thing, but I think for the longest time, Peter Parker was the best example of an everyman character, wasn't he? I think, you know, like, for boys, you know, like, for nerdy boys, he was a nerdy boy. For science geeks, he was a science geek. For even your sporty guys, you know, like, ultimately he becomes, I say sporty, but, you know, athletic in what he can do, and he can do the heroic things. But I feel like there was something in there for everyone, and I think that core, you know, like, very sometimes could be argued is hammered home too much if you watch repeated versions of the movies. But that concept of with great power comes great responsibility, and you know, like, based off of at early doors, him not doing something. And him not doing something costing the life of a loved one, and I think that, you know, that true powerful message of a hero. Well, I think that's what it says to there, of going, look, always try and do your best, always try and do the right thing, because if you don't try and do the right thing, bad things can happen to those around you. And you know, like, I think the amount of time that he's endured does make him fantastic. And as I say, like, I did want to put him on the list, but there were just others I like more. Is the honest truth, but I think for pure craft and creation, yeah, he's fucking amazing, isn't he? Like, literally amazing with his amazing Spider-Man.
The other thing that does sort of give this one a little bit more of a boost is the reinvention that they've done with doing Miles, as him, because yes, there have been black heroes before, but none of them are that. I hate to use the tiering thing, but that top tier god level superhero.
Yeah, in that public consciousness so much that kind
Yeah.
of
You
I
know,
think it must
everyone
resonate.
knows who Spider-Man is.
Yeah.
You know, it's the same as like you say Batman, you say Superman, you say Spider-Man. People know who they are, whether
Well,
they
I think
read the stuff just because of them being
I think we said it before. Like
thing.
now, you can add in like most of the dudes from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but if you rewind, if you go in a time machine to 25 years ago, and you ask people to name 3 superheroes, they would name Batman, Superman, Spider-Man in whatever order, wouldn't they? So yeah,
Yeah.
I think I think he's had that attention for such a long period of time that yes, I think you are talking like. Regardless, I would have thought in 100 years' time, Spider-Man was still a character that everyone would know because I
Yeah.
don't think it's ever he's ever going away. You said about reinvention. I think one of the clever things they did with him along the way is they've actually reinvented him throughout the years as well. You know, they didn't keep him stuck in his high school body. You know, I think you see more of the passage of time and the growth with him than you do a lot of superheroes that started publishing back then. I mean, Mr. Fantastic now. You couldn't tell whether he's a day older than he was when they first started publishing him. Whereas with Peter, you know, he did that. He went through some college years, then he started to work regularly at the Daily Bugle, right the way up to him getting married, and then some retconning of things like that out of existence.
Yeah.
But you know, I think they've managed to keep that core message of his heroism going throughout that. I mean, bloody hell, it's pretty amazing, isn't it? To 40, 50 years later, still be able to whack out the line with great power comes great responsibility. Even though I might have read 500 issues that he's been in, I kind of go, yeah, it still works to this day.
Yeah. And that's the thing, obviously, with how they do the character. Because again, I've not read a load of them, but I've read a few when they've been freebies or preview stuff of the Miles being Spider-Man, and with those again, he's still the same, kid trying to be good, and be a kid, but also know that you have this power and have to save the world. But also doing it in, as you said, like Kamala Khan, giving a black audience their hero, their someone to believe in, that is that level of a character that, as I said, is that tier that fucking everyone knows.
Well, I think you sort of said about like that comparison to Kamala Khan. I know I did it like the other way around when I mentioned it earlier, but I think without her, I'd have found it even harder not to have Spidey on the list. But I kind of felt that she scratched the Spidey itch for me, and just but potentially just resonates more. I like her more, is the honest truth. And I know it's a really strange thing to say in a world where I'm waxing lyrical about how great Spidey is, but I'll be honest, when I was a kid, didn't read a lot of Spidey stuff. In fact, if anything, I wasn't so interested in. But no, through no fault of his, he wasn't the character that I wanted to read and I wanted to vibe with. I think sometimes I find it much the same as possibly with Superman, but for very different reasons. Sometimes I think I find the figurehead, the icon, thrust down my throat a little bit too much, and I go to some of the other stuff because I find that sometimes the creators are not allowed to be so creative with those characters because you can't break the best toy. Whereas if they're maybe a smaller character, it allows them to do some. I was going to say more interesting. That's probably the wrong term, but some more dramatic changes and adaptations to characters. Yeah. But yeah, I think. An excellent pick, and I'd have no problem with him being anywhere between 1 to 5 on anyone's list because I think he's an amazing hero and an amazing character that we'll go back to sort of some of this stuff of stood the test of time already, and I think will continue to stand the test of time. I don't think they're going anywhere.
So who makes number 2 for you?
And that two and one were quite difficult to distinguish between, but I guess I had to in the end, so I did. Fuck me, I'm back with the X-Men again, and it's a very important era in comic books for me. And as much as we've just been talking about Spidey's role as a hero, I think the X-Men role as heroes in a world, and maybe the stuff it taught me about the world, about not judging people because of their differences, and I'd love to say that that's true, but obviously we've all got that prick side to us sometimes, but maybe more so the don't judge people because of differences that happens because of something to do with birth. Like judge them for being a prick.
Yeah.
Don't judge him for being born as something, and so I think I learned a lot there, and it's an odd one for me. So my number 2 is Rogue. And again I think, but maybe because of the era when I really started to read X-Men, she was very much in it, and got like kind of a very interesting backstory. She was a villain when she comes in, and actually she gets her power set, which I think is ostensibly first off like a really cool power set. She can fly, she's super strong, etc, etc. Well, she gets that by using what is her real power, which is if she touches someone she can drain their powers, and drain their life force to a degree, and she does that for too long to Miss Marvel, and gets Miss Marvel's powers, and retains that, and that stays with her for a very long time in the comic book story. But I think you've got this kind of visually impressive character. I mean, she looks great. Like when they draw her, she looks great. She's got this great base set of powers, and she's doing that thing that I think I quite like in heroes, where she's fighting the villain aside from that bad start. She makes a choice to become good, partly because of the harrowing experience of accidentally almost killing someone. She didn't really want to be that person, but it drives her to be better. But you see that conflict through of going, but I do kind of have that side to me. And you wrap that in with her other power being this draining life. She cannot touch anyone and no one can touch her. And I don't know what that says about me as a human, but there's just something amazingly compelling about that. And all the way through. And, I said earlier about at certain points, maybe like I would say, stop reading. Like, that's that kind of element of her character was removed and has been re-added. But I think up to a point, it just fascinated me. It fascinated me of going, like, why is this person a hero? They've been dealt such a bad hand. They can't even they can't give someone a hug. They can't connect physically with anyone. But actually, somehow, still through that, they still want to be a hero. They still try everything they can to be a hero, with, as I say, a little bit of a darker side potentially to them. I do like that in my heroes. I like them to have that kind of, not necessarily that they would kill, but you can see that it's a bit of a tougher decision than it maybe is for some of the others. They're closer to it, and just a character that I absolutely love from. I guess my first read right the way up to probably a good 20 years of published stories. I never lost that affection for the character.
Yeah, no, Rogue is one of those that's very cool.
It's that flawed heroes again. Like we said this in our in I guess what makes a hero, what we like in it. Give me some flaw that they have to fight against, that they have to that restricts them. And I think then not only do the heroic things they do get a woo, yeah, they did something heroic, but even more of a oomph behind it. Because I go, you did that, and you live in a world that judges you because of that you were born a mutant, and you can't even get that physical closeness with anyone, and no one realizes this. You fucks. She's a hero, and then I'm totally on the bandwagon at that point.
Yes.
So you're number 2.
4.
I did wonder.
So, again, another one that doesn't have to come and protect Earth. He could sit there upon his godly throne, but feels a moral duty to be a good god and help the humans on Midgard. but also, goes around smashing up frost giants. Does he kill? Yeah, sometimes. But, a lot of the
It's
time
kind of a more of an old school religious justice kill, isn't it? Like
yeah,
it's not like a Punisher retribution kill. It's a bit like this is how we do shit in Norse mythology. Deal
yeah.
with it. Yeah.
But yeah, again, it's one of those of just he doesn't have to be a hero. He could quite easily sit there with Odin and just let the
Who's a dick,
yeah
by the
Odin
way?
is Odin,
I think like as much as Loki's the bad guy, I think the inclusion of Odin and generally how he's written is a good thing for Thor because he's the aloof god, isn't he? He's the
yeah
like we're better than you god, and I think it shows Thor in a much better light.
yeah, because a lot of the time Odin's there going, why are you doing this? Why do you go and help them? Just let them sort themselves out. But Thor will just go down with the Furious Four and sort out Earth's problems or any other realms' problems, and
I've
just
read
walk.
I've read some great Thor. I've read some average Thor, and the average stuff's fine. So you said Silver Surfer earlier.
Yeah,
I think there's some DNA sharing there, isn't it? Like that kind of you're not one of us, but you still choose to save us. Possibly controversially so. Thor didn't even make my considered list because if you look outside of movie Thor, let's put movie Thor to one side because it's a different beast. Like
yeah,
I think much more played for comedy and stupidity, but still really good. Don't get me wrong. There's been too many Thor stories where they're that aloof thing I just said about Odin. There are too many stories I think I've read that sometimes we feel like pets to him, like as in he thinks he is loftier than humans, and much of that heroism has sometimes, and maybe it's just in bad writers' hands, felt like, "Oh, I better help out the little people. I better
yeah.
help out the and I don't know. Sometimes I've found him almost that godlike element to him is maybe something I'm initially resistant to. Maybe I don't like. Um,
Yeah,
I don't. Maybe I don't like gods. Possibly, I don't know.
there are some bits that I've read where you're right. There is that. Uh, why can't they just sort themselves out?
Yeah, I better
Go,
go down
go,
and help
go
help
sort
the help the idiots because I wanna tap up that Jane Foster later, and and I don't know. Just there are times where I've found him easier to disconnect with than some other heroes. Let's say.
Yeah, there are
Great hair though,
some.
beautiful
Yeah,
hair.
beautiful there.
Yeah.
The one thing I haven't read is I haven't read the female Thor stuff. Yeah,
I actually love that run. I thought it was really good. I'm very reticent to the just fundamentally changing a character's sex or race because sometimes it's so gimmicky, isn't it?
yeah.
Sometimes it is kind of like
It feels
you
like box ticking.
yeah, and like I think I step into fear. I step into any of these things with fear, but kind of like the writers who were involved, and I left it at a few issues and had heard some promising stuff, so tippy toed into it. And I've got to be honest, like I mean it's comic book, so Thor, male Thor, becomes male Thor again, and Lady Thor goes off to the side. We won't go into whys and wherefores, but I actually, and you know what I said, like didn't go across my mind for the list, and maybe despite the very, very hilarious and cracking performance in the movies, I think I'm actually a bit more fond of Lady Thor than I am of Male Thor, but maybe that's a bit of a recency bias. The last uh, there's a Thor run I like after that with Mal Thor, but it feels like he's less. Oh God, this is going to sound so daft to say so. He's less Thor-like at that point. He's coming out of a bad time, and you're
Yeah,
actually seeing him become Thor again. But no, as I say, I don't want to kind of like knock any pits because I think he would make a lot of people's lists, but yeah, just maybe some of my experiences. And as I say, I think gods don't resonate well with me. See every comment we've ever made about Superman.
Yeah.
And the only god that tends to ever resonate me with is Hercules, because he just gets pissed all the time.
So who makes your top spot?
Number one, the big daddy of them all, and he is a big daddy because he is a male character.
Is he from
It
X-Men?
is No, he's not from X-Men. He is from Avengers, and as you can see, what a Marvel heavy list this was. But I guess that's where a lot of my early doors love for superheroes and superhero comics come from. But it's Vision. And not purely because I bought that series for you and I'm trying to ram it down your throat. I'll go back to character design again. What a striking kind of visual, and because he's not a human character, because he's an android, obviously you're not confined to human being skin colors and maybe the way they dress. But very similar to, I guess, what we were saying about Silver Surfer. Because he's from an alien world, it allows you to give him a more initially visually striking view to him. But he's had his ups and downs in latter years and things like that. But I still go back to he. This is going to remind you of something you said a few times. Doesn't need to be a hero. He's an android, and he kind of potentially learns his moral compass by some coding and parrot fashion at first. But one of the big and wonderful parts of the stories is you see this non-human character become more and more human, and you get to come along that journey with him. And I loved coming on that journey with him. And you get to see him find love, and you get to see him find a family. You also get to see, I think, something that you can do with something that is an android-esque story. You get to see people do more nefarious things to them electronically than you would with a human being. Like human beings are always kind of reliant on the telepathy and the mind control element of it. But it's allowed to sort of tell some stories where maybe he kind of breaks bad for whatever reason, but it gives you an out to come back. But also in some of that, I think it's allowed for them to be quite smart with him and show him as learning the human condition and actually rejecting it at certain points, and turning a bit more cold and calculated again, and going, no, I'm still going to do these things, but maybe not driven by love or oh, look, isn't that puppy cute, but doing it because logically it is the right thing to do, rather than anything else. But he's a hero that I went on the journey with, and I love that Vision series that you've got to come up and read. But I would say that there's been so much and he's been through so many writers' hands that not everything is perfect, and I'm not necessarily always gone, yes, they've got him spot on. But I think that basic level of learning to be a human whilst learning to be a hero, and those two things interspersing, has just always made him stand out to me as one of my favourite heroes, or in this case my favourite hero, but certainly in this top five. It's hard to distinguish which ones I love the most, but yeah. So I'm going. I love characters that can't touch anyone. I love androids who are cold and calculated. But I think in all of those things, what kind of for a lot of my characters that made it in there, I could see a kind of running theme of it's that learning what it's to be a human, or learning what it's to be a good and productive member of society, and trying to do your best, or on the flip side, doing that regardless of how shitty people treat you.
Yes.
And he looks pretty. Number one for you.
So who do you think it is?
I think it's Batman.
It's Batman and Chronic.
I always thought it was going to be Batman. There was times where I thought, don't do Batman because it'll be boring if we both have the same number one. But honestly, when I sat down and I kind of went in my criteria, as much as I love Batman as a character, and I do, he wasn't going to be my number one. But I would have gone to the bookies today with every penny I had in my house to put money on that you were going to have Batman as number one. Don't let me down. I've got a paper slip in my pocket.
It's Blunt Man and Chronic.
And you can only have one of them, Blunt Man or Chronic.
But they come as a pair. No,
I'm afraid there's some rules, Chris. There's some rules.
Damn it.
Yeah, damn the rules.
So yeah, it was obvious. It's Batman. Again, doesn't have to be a hero. Is a millionaire who runs a tech company and doesn't need to do anything, but does it because he can.
Yeah.
And
well, there's that. You said a millionaire thing, and I think there's been periods of time where you talk about that kind of unconscious bias that you have, and maybe like that come out in Thor of me going, I don't like gods. Yeah. I think I don't like millionaires. And so I think there's a bit of an unconscious bias, but I think there's that kind of wonderful storytelling thing that I think's evolved over the years, which is like that's the act he plays. He's not a millionaire. Despite being a millionaire, he's not a millionaire, is he? His whole focus is kind of crime solving, and that's the costume he puts on during the day so that people don't realise what he's doing at night.
But yeah, as you said, sort of moral compass. Go back to what I said about Daredevil. He doesn't kill. When do you see Batman ever kill?
It's strange you say about the comparison to Daredevil, because do you know one of the reasons why he didn't make my top 5? When I sat down and thought about it, I thought I'd put Daredevil in over him. Because they are so similar. They are so similar. And again, don't get me wrong, some amazing stuff. And I love him. I think I do love him as Batman. I love him as a hero. But when I sort of started to think about them against each other, it was the Matt Murdock side, that being a hero during the day as much as he is at night, kind of made me start to lean towards Daredevil. And I'm just like, well, okay, maybe Brucey Batman doesn't make it. And that's when he started to fall down the league table for me.
But yeah, as I said, we waxed lyrical about the bats.
Looks fucking cool as well, didn't he?
In so many other issues of this show, but
yeah,
he is
very versatile as well, isn't he?
Yeah.
You talk about like how when you say about Spiderman, like Spiderman, iconic character. Superman, like as much as we don't like him, iconic character. Batman, iconic character. But I actually think so. In Spider-Man, you might have seen him go through a lot of like age changes. So like I think he's grown the most as a character. But I think visually and storytelling techniques, I think you could say very much the same with Batman. Everything from kind of the more, well, let's go to Batman 66, something that we both love, that kind of camp comedy-esque element, to true crime, to gritty noir crime, to gritty street level 1970s Scorsese-esque crime, to the more fanciful side of superheroes, to the big mega groups like the Justice League, and with sometimes portrayed as a real dark side. Like again, doesn't kill, but can sometimes be very much portrayed as much, probably like I said about Vision, of going, sometimes it's logic. Sometimes he will do something bad.
He will,
because ultimately that's for the good of all. So I think a very versatile character over the years, but always, when I say always, I'm sure there's the odd issue here and there where you get like a kind of I'll be elsewhere in DC, but what if Batman become bad, or even like a hint that he's turned bad, but and ultimately he isn't, but keeps that code, keeps that heroic core going for all that time, and looks fucking cool. I think there's a truth in all the things that we do on this. Is this is a visual medium as much as it is a written medium as well, and that does have a bearing. Like I think sometimes you just the character design resonates with you, and if you said to someone cold without having lived in a world of Batman, we're going to kind of invent this character and he's a dude that dresses up like a bat, you go, fuck off, that's stupid. But it really works. It's striking, and I think it backs that hero-esque element to him.
So it was obvious it was known, but you know, these things happen.
But I think it's kind of right though, isn't it? You know,
Yeah.
like you probably wouldn't speak about him as much as you do if you didn't like him so much. You know, if it didn't resonate with you. And I think that's the honest truth. And you know, like I think some of mine really were born out of the time when I really started reading.
Yeah.
And they stayed with me, and I think that actually helps in that kind of favourite hero. If they were a hero to you when you were a kid, and they've still managed to maintain that in your head now, then
Yeah.
you know that's a win for a hero story for me.
You know, but as we said back in episode 1 of you know, intro stories, Batman was my in from Batman 66 to the Burton films, the animated series. You know, if you look at my comic shelf, it is 70% Batman stuff because it's my go-to.
Yeah.
So yeah, though I will promise that when we do a top villains list, we'll exclude Batman villains because it would just be a top 5 of Batman
The thing is,
villains.
though, we said that when we did the supervillain team, and we said like, oh, like is this just pick your 5 favourite Batman villains and chuck them in? Something that I think is worth mentioning, both about your number 1 and was Spidey number 3.
Yeah,
Something that I would say less so on my list, but a really powerful tool, as you mentioned, villains is sometimes heroes can be made infinitely better by the villains that they are around them. And I look at Spidey's pantheon of villains, and I look at Batman's pantheon of villains, and I go talking about those two as the mega compelling, almost timeless ones. Is I think they are aided by having such a great rogues gallery, and I think it really, really, really helps those characters. It helps the writers tell better heroic stories if you boo, hiss, hate the villains a lot more, or even sometimes you're sympathetic to the villains, and that makes you even more so love the heroism when you can see that the hero is trying to do everything. You know, he can see that the villain's only there because they've had one bad day, and maybe that they can feel that more, and then not just going into the impulses of they are bad, biff them on the nose, or they are bad, shoot a semi-automatic machine gun Punisher style.
yeah, and to get some information out and put a drill to their head.
Yeah, and you know, like maybe these things that oh god, this is a confession that you think you would do yourself. I think heroes are what you'd want to do. Anti-heroes are what you think you actually probably would do. And yeah, what a great character, because as you say, mega cool. He's got all the toys, he's got the gadgets, he's got the car, but ultimately, you know, he is a human. He's just a man, like, and he's had to train himself to get to this point where he can do these amazing things, but he still has that fragility. Yeah. So where I search for maybe my heroism in someone who doesn't have a reason, you know, they don't have a mum and a dad like I do in the same way, or they've not been treated the same way I have. I think Batman tickles a different sort of heroism, doesn't it? Of going, there's almost a wish fulfillment element. Who wouldn't want to be as honed as they can as a human being? Unfortunately, I want that without getting my ass off the sofa. I'm not willing to spend 20 years plus training in fighting schools and maintaining that, because even if I did do that 20 years, once I'd reached that pinnacle, I'd go, well, I've done that. What's on Netflix? Yeah.
So that will be us for another week.
We want to know from you guys. We want to know in the comments of this video who are your favourite heroes and why. Because a list is great, but getting a little bit of understanding as to what heroes resonate with you and why, that would be absolutely fandabidozy. God, fucking channeling fandabidozy. That's a term I haven't used for a long time. Crankies will be after us. They'll put a copyright infringement up on this.
Yeah, so next week, as we do on most of these now, where to start X-Men? I'm throwing it on you for next week.
Yeah, and do you know what? Like, got to watch me burn, crash and burn on this. But I think it's going to be relatively easy, as in we said with Batman. There's a lot. There's a lot to pick from, and I think there really are some tentpole moments. But strap yourselves in, everyone, because there is a lot, and I think sometimes that has a dark side to it as well of going. God, like if you do jump in at this point, as much as it's a good jumping in point, you've got 35 years worth of publication to go afterwards. But yeah, it will bring me great pleasure to talk about the X-Men because, as I say, I think it's a franchise that if we were doing this um, 15, 20 years ago, probably before the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I think, I mean, not necessarily for you because it wasn't with you, but it would be X-Men, X-Men, X-Men because that was Marvel.
Yeah.
So, yeah, kind of a very interesting topic from that regard. So, yeah, where to start with X-Men? The multiple places there are to start with X-Men.
All the big hits. The one that I do expect to hear is Dark Phoenix because that's a massive story moment.
You won't hear it on that show.
Or is that not a start point then? Is that
No, but I mean, I'll touch on some of them. I think I'll touch on because, like where we said with Batman, there's so many singular stories, but I think with the X-Men there are a few. There are longer runs, but less tentpole stories. But I'll touch on some of the tentpole stories because I think they are the ones that you might have heard of, might have seen, and maybe I'll touch on why they are not good starting points. And as wonderful as that story is, we'll get to as to why I don't think that's a good starting point.
I'm going to get educated that week.
Mm.
Be there with me out with my list of like adding them onto Amazon as we're going.
See, like memory boy's got to remember facts though. I'll have like pops behind here to try and remind me of what happens when
visual aids.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Seddon, it was wonderful to get back on the horse and do this again.
Yeah, the boys ride again.
And we will be back next week with more X-Men talk. As you brought it all up in your heroes.
Yeah.
And goodbye.
Thanks for watching, and just remember, you can join the Cult of Egg by liking and subscribing to this YouTube channel. We release regular content where we talk about all things geek, all things pop culture, and all things that we're interested in. You can also come along and join the discussion on Facebook groups and Renaissance Cast. And you can join us on our Twitch channel where Stu regularly streams games. And if you'd like to support us, then please follow the link for the Patreon. Thanks very much.